Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into a totally fascinating doctoral dissertation, one that brilliantly bridges some pretty abstract sociological theories with the very real, historical emergence of Korean new religions. Reading through this dissertation, the thing that really stands out is how these intense periods of historical crisis didn't just cause chaos, they actually gave birth to a completely unique form of social evolution called autogenous modernity. It's honestly an incredibly compelling way to look at how societies adapt, survive, and basically recreate themselves from the ground up. And we are going to map it all out right now.
Okay, let's take a quick look at our roadmap for today. We'll start with 1, understanding liminality, then move to 2, Donghak thought and crisis, 3, Daesun thought and revitalization, 4, defining autogenous modernity, and finally 5, significance in today's world.
All right, Section 1, Understanding Liminality, the Theoretical Lens. Let's jump in. So, before we even touch the history, we really need a powerful conceptual tool, a lens to view all that chaos of the past. I want you to think about this for a second. What actually happens to a society when the ground completely falls out from under it? You know, when the old rules absolutely no longer apply, but the new rules haven't even been written yet. We usually just think of crises as disasters, right? But sociologically speaking, a massive crisis is actually the ultimate catalyst for deep, structural societal transformation.
And well, that brings us to this beautiful concept, liminality. It comes from the Latin word limen, which translates directly to threshold. Imagine you're walking through a doorway. You've left one room behind, but you haven't quite stepped into the next one yet. You are standing right there on the threshold. It's this ambiguous and, let's face it, sometimes scary middle ground. But because the old structures are gone, it's also a space of incredible creativity, where entirely new possibilities can open up. This is exactly how whole societies feel during major historical upheavals.
You know, we can actually break this feeling down into a sequence. Back in 1909, a scholar named Arnold van Gennep formulated this famous three-step rite of passage theory to explain how human beings transition through major life events. First, you separate from your old status. Second, you enter that transitional boundary state, the liminal space. And finally, you integrate back into society, but with a brand new identity.
Now, over time, this theory really evolved. Van Gennep started it in 1909 for personal rituals, but by the 1960s, a brilliant anthropologist named Victor Turner scaled this whole thing up. He realized it wasn't just individuals going through rites of passage, entire societies do it too. When a culture faces a massive crisis, the whole society enters this messy, transitional, liminal state. And then, by the 2000s, sociologists started connecting this to our current era of liquid modernity, this idea that modern society is just in a state of constant, ambiguous flux.
Which brings us to Section 2, Donghak thought and crisis, a society at the threshold.
All right, let's take our brand new theoretical lens of liminality and apply it directly to a specific historical crisis. In the 19th century, Korea was hit by the terrifying external shock of Western and Japanese imperialism. And the source material highlights that this wasn't just your standard political struggle. It felt like a true existential threat, a looming fear of ethnic cleansing as imperial powers dominated Asia. This massive external pressure created a terrifying societal threshold. The old world was shattering, and the entire society was thrust straight into a state of severe liminality.
There's a quote from the source text that really hits the nail on the head here. It says, Donghak ideology arose as a rite of passage to overcome the crisis of ethnic cleansing in the imperialist domination of Asia. So the crucial takeaway is that Donghak wasn't just some religion that randomly popped up. No way. It was a visceral, societal survival mechanism. It was a literal rite of passage for a culture desperately trying to navigate the threshold of a historical nightmare to find a new identity. So how did it work? Well, Donghak provided the internal change necessary to survive this crisis. It relied on what's called correlative reasoning, meaning it looked at the interconnectedness of things rather than just seeing opposing forces. And it put a massive focus on life and coexistence. It utilized the boundary spaces of the traditional yin-yang worldview. Essentially, it took the cultural tools people already had on hand and used them to birth a new kind of modernity right from within the crisis itself.
Moving right along to Section 3, Daesun thought and revitalization, the power of communities.
Now, a crisis can totally spark a movement, but how does that movement actually sustain itself and rebuild a society? To answer that, we bring back our guy Victor Turner and his concept of communitas. See, when a society is stuck in that liminal threshold space, all the old hierarchies break down. Communitas becomes the ultimate equalizer. It's this temporary anti-structure where everyone is anonymous, everyone is equal, and you find this paradoxical power among the weak. It's literally the feeling of everyone being in the trenches together, figuring out the new rules of survival as one unified body.
Building directly on that, Daesun thought took all that initial, raw crisis energy from Donghak and channeled it into a deeply powerful communitas. It became all about community-driven practice in daily life. Rather than just tossing the past in the trash to become modern, it focused heavily on the creative reconstruction and reinterpretation of tradition. This is what the dissertation calls revitalization, basically using the past as high-octane fuel for future-oriented change.
Next up is Section 4, Defining Autogenous Modernity, East meets West.
Okay, now we're ready to zoom out to the grand thesis of the source material. We've seen how liminality and revitalization worked on the ground, so let's set up the ultimate battle of sociological ideas. This contrast is the absolute crux of our explainer. The traditional view of becoming modern is heavily based on the Western model. Western modernity relies on dialectical opposition, this dichotomous structure that demands a sharp, hard break from tradition. The old must be destroyed so the new can live. But what happened in Korea with Donghak and Daesun was completely different. It's autogenous modernity. It relies on correlative reason and integration. It doesn't break with tradition at all, it revitalizes it, ensuring a continuous, unbroken line from the past straight into the modern future.
And this brilliantly illustrates the academic core of our explainer, straight from the source. It shows exactly how autogenous modernity requires a combination of internal change, which is our liminality, and external adaptation, which is revitalization. It creates totally new value, not by destroying the past, but by cleverly shifting the boundaries between the sacred and the profane. So just to summarize this point, autogenous modernity is a deeply organic, lived experience. It's all about pushing through societal trauma by adapting externally while fundamentally changing internally. It honors the accumulation of bodily experiences and cultural memories. It proves, without a doubt, that you do not have to amputate your cultural roots to survive the modern world. You can actually use those exact roots to grow a completely new kind of modern canopy. And that brings us to Section 5, Significance in Today's World, Why This Matters Now. So we've gone through the theory, we've explored the history, and we've unpacked the big thesis. But let's pivot to the present day, right now. Because this isn't just dusty history, it's a highly practical blueprint. We currently live in a world of what sociologists call liquid modernity. Everything feels totally ambiguous, structures are constantly shifting, and honestly, crises feel like a daily occurrence. The source text beautifully integrates Western theory with East Asian thought to offer us a real framework. It shows us that communities today can absolutely survive modern liquid crises by relying on the solidarity of communitas and the revitalization of our shared traditions. I want to leave you with this really provocative question. If it's true that our modern society is stuck in a state of eternal liminality, always on the threshold, always facing down the next major crisis, then how will we build our own communitas to survive it? How will we use our own traditions to revitalize our future? It's a fascinating question to ponder, and I really hope this guide to the doctoral dissertation has given you the conceptual tools to start answering it for yourself. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive.